All right, so I have before me the MacBook Pro M2 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy Book3 Ultra. Now, the biggest difference you're going to see right off the bat is I have the 14-inch model. I understand it's not the 16, so there's going to be some things that are not directly head-to-head as if I had the 16-inch model. We're going to be looking at the key features and benchmarks between the MacBook Pro and the Galaxy Book3 Ultra. Now, first and foremost, these laptops do line up quite a bit in performance, and I have a full performance section at the end of this video. But first, we're gonna dive into the build quality and usability of the two laptops to see which one is right for you. Now, right off the bat, if you're a Mac OS fanboy or fangirl, or if you're a Windows fanboy or fangirl, are you watching this video to confirm your inklings that the other one sucks or that the other one isn't actually what you want? Because that's really the weirdest argument that I see when I compare a Windows versus a Apple product, is everybody's like, oh, the Apple is clearly better, or, oh, the Windows is clearly better. So if you're not here to actually watch from an objective standpoint, performance, usability, and you're simply looking at this at whether to confirm or deny your own prejudices of Apple versus Windows, shame on you. Watch this video with an open mind. You might learn something today. All right, first and foremost, the build quality is actually very similar. I'm gonna say that there's gonna be a bit more of rigidity in the screen on the Apple MacBook Pro. Now, it is a little bit of a cheat because it is a 14-inch model versus the big 16-inch model, but it is a little bit more rigid in regards to the screen. And I think you're gonna see that same translation from the 14 to the 16 because it is a bit of a thicker screen. If we can get them right up next to each other and line them up with the camera, you'll see that it's ever so slightly thicker. A little hardier aluminum that they're using on the MacBook Pro. Now you flip them over and they both are put together very nicely. You get the bottom cover attached into the side panel very nicely on the MacBook Pro, as well as the Samsung Galaxy Book3 Ultra. So I would say punch for punch, they both have great build quality. However, from a rigidity standpoint, it's gonna feel a little denser, a little bit more sturdy coming out of the MacBook Pro. Now, taking a look at the ports, that's one area that I really think the MacBook Pro wins out. We have a full-size SD card reader, a USB Type-C HDMI, and on the left side panel, we have two USB Type-Cs and a dedicated power port. I like this because then you're not stealing one of your USB Type-Cs like you are on the, let's just call it the Ultra. Can we just call it the Ultra? On the Samsung Ultra, you have to actually use one of the USB-C ports as your charger port. And then of course we have a headphone jack here on the MacBook Pro. For the Ultra, we have two USB Type-Cs, an HDMI port, and then on the right side panel, we have a micro SD card reader. A USB Type-A, and a headphone jack. I love that the MacBook Pro comes with a full-size SD card slot. Hallelujah. Over the past few years, my wife has had her personal information stolen and accounts opened without her approval. A while back, we found some of these accounts and took action to eliminate these issues. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. We've been using Aura to monitor our personal information online for over a year now and have been able to reclaim control of our personal data. Aura will identify data brokers that are exposing your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Anyone can find anything on the internet, including your full legal name, your personal email, your home address, phone number, and even your relatives. This information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and anyone else that wants to learn more about you. Aura will even opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing lists. You can use my link by going to aura.com/BenjiKaiser to try a 2-week free trial to see how many data brokers are sharing your information. Aura's app also features a VPN, password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitor, internet parental controls, and protects your devices from malware. Aura has almost every internet safety tool you'll ever need, all inside one app. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link in the video description. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks. It's quite frightening, actually. Aura.com/BenjiKaiser or scan the QR code on the screen right now. I think you'll be very happy with the protection that you receive and the level of comfort that you get by using Aura. We have been extremely happy using it for over a year, and I definitely recommend it. Pulling the two laptops up, looking at the weight and thickness, if I'm not mistaken, the 16-inch MacBook Pro is a little bit thicker than the 14-inch. And as you can see, they're almost identical in their thickness. So whether you go for the MacBook Pro or the Ultra, they're going to be about the same weight and thickness. Even if you're choosing the 16-inch model of the MacBook Pro, it might be a smidge heavier than the Galaxy Book. I'll put the numbers up on the screen so that way you know for sure the differences in weight with the 16-inch model. Now, so you can see a quick sample of the webcams in use. Here's a sample of each of them. This is the webcam on the Apple MacBook Pro 14-inch M2, and a little sample of the audio for you as well. This is the webcam on the Samsung Galaxy Book3 Ultra, and a little sample of the audio for you as well. And if you're curious about which one has better speakers, spoiler alert, it's the MacBook Pro, but here's a quick audio sample so you can check it out. Now the keyboard and trackpad, I am still a fanboy of the Apple keyboard. They've just done such a good job of refining it over the years. They really botched it up with the butterfly keyboard. A number of years ago, they had that whole series of the butterfly keyboard, and that was a terrible keyboard. So they switched back to the scissor switch, and it is just as good as it's ever been. I really love it. Not to say that Samsung is not a good keyboard. It just isn't as refined as the Apple MacBook Pro keyboard. I really, really like it. Now they both sit nicely in this little cutout beveled drop-in for the keyboard. So that makes the keys kind of sit really nicely on top of the keyboard deck. Now you do have a numpad on the Galaxy Book Ultra, and so that is really advantageous if you're a big numpad user. And then as far as the trackpad is concerned, I don't know the exact comparison of the 16-inch off the top of my head. I have not had one in my studio for a long time, but you can see the 16 versus the 14, a much larger trackpad on the 16-inch. And I'm pretty sure, though, that the 16-inch MacBook Pro has a trackpad that comes close to this size. However, the big difference between the trackpads that we can talk about right now on this review is that the Apple MacBook Pro is a vibration click trackpad, whereas the Samsung Galaxy Book3 Ultra is a manual click trackpad. So you click it and your trackpad is actually depressing and creating that click, whereas it's a vibration click that happens inside of the software on the Apple MacBook Pro. You're actually not depressing the trackpad at all. Now, this is advantageous because you can click anywhere on the trackpad to get a click, whereas with the Ultra, you can't actually do a physical click until about halfway down the trackpad because it has a hinge at the top of the trackpad that hinges down to activate the click. Now you can do a tap touch wherever you want. Of course, the actual physical click is near the halfway point to the bottom. Now the advantage of the Galaxy Book Ultra is you have a number of fan modes. So you can select different fan modes and you can kind of customize your experience of the performance settings. Whereas Apple is going to take it into their own hands to tell you how they think you should be using the computer. Now during the performance benchmarks, we'll see some advantages going to the Ultra rather than the MacBook Pro. However, what you'll find is if you're on performance mode, you might even hear your fans kick on when you're just sitting here and idle. Like right now, my fan is on and I'm not doing anything. However, if I log in and bump it into quiet mode, fan immediately kicks off and you're good to go. Now, one thing that really sets apart the Ultra from the MacBook Pro is the upgrade path. You can actually upgrade 2 SSD slots inside of the Ultra. So you have the main slot that comes occupied when you purchase the laptop, and then a secondary M.2 slot where you can go ahead and put an SSD in for extra storage. When it comes to the MacBook Pro, what you purchase it with is what it's staying with. However, the Ultra has the same problem as the MacBook when it comes to RAM. You cannot upgrade the RAM post-purchase. What you purchase the laptop with is what you're going to stay with. So make sure you choose wisely with how much RAM you select if you purchase either of these laptops. Now, I realize I completely forgot to give you a sample of the audio for the keyboards and trackpads. So here's a quick sample of the keyboard trackpad so you can hear what it sounds like in use. Now, I hope right now you cannot tell if I'm an Apple fanboy or a Windows fanboy, because that is my overall goal with these videos. Now, one thing to consider, a reason I'm a big fan of Samsung laptops in the Windows category is because they have really created a Apple-esque ecosystem. A lot of people rave about the iPhone, iWatch, iPad, MacBook Pro ecosystem, how they all work together very well. Well, Samsung prides themselves on a similar ecosystem. You can get a Samsung tablet, phone, watch, and laptop, and they all sync together very well. Problem with buying another Windows laptop is you won't be benefiting from that Samsung ecosystem. Now, keep in mind, you'll have to buy all Samsung products as you would with Apple, but if you're a fan of Windows, the Samsung is a great choice if you're wanting to start to build out an ecosystem around your workflow and your products like Apple has done for their iPhone, iPad, iWatch, and Mac computer users. So that's one big reason you might want to consider getting the Galaxy Book if you're starting to build out that ecosystem for yourself. Now, quickly jumping into the color gamut range, they are both really close. However, you're going to get better color accuracy out of the Samsung Galaxy Book Ultra, a little bit higher color gamut range, a little bit lower Delta E, which is a better thing, but ultimately the brightness is going to be brighter on the Apple MacBook Pro, about 426 nits of brightness out of the Galaxy Book Ultra, and about 500 nits of brightness out of the Apple MacBook Pro. So pretty punch for punch. You got a mini LED display on the Apple MacBook Pro, whereas you have an OLED display on the Galaxy Book Ultra. Okay, battery life. This is one area that makes all Windows users sob a sad story. Okay, the MacBook Pro just has it when it comes to battery life. As you see the results coming up on the screen, it really is not even a competition. Now, where it becomes a competition is later in the performance. But as you can tell, the Apple MacBook Pro takes the crown, and actually the 16-inch model gets even better battery life because they fit a bigger battery into the laptop. So if you're somebody who's on the go a lot, it makes no sense to choose the Galaxy Book over the MacBook Pro if you're somebody who does not want to touch a charger for hours on end. It's like a big killjoy for you if you have to find an outlet and plug your laptop in. So keep that in mind that you get good battery life, especially for the i9 13900H and RTX 4070 that comes in the Galaxy Book Ultra, but it is not as good of battery life as you will find on the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. Now, before we jump into the performance benchmarks, let's talk about the pricing between these two laptops. If you're curious about the exact pricing, I'll put links in the description below. And if you do make a purchase through that link, I'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. Now, these computers are a little bit skewed when it comes to pricing. In order to pick up the MacBook Pro, starting it's $1999 for the MacBook Pro 14-inch M2 Pro. The starting price for the 16-inch variant of those same specs is $26.99. You can get into the i7 version of the Ultra for about $26.99, give or take. Check the live pricing below. You can get into the i9 version for $29.99. Now keep in mind that the i9 version is probably equivalent to upgrading the M1 Pro to the M1 Max. So you're actually pretty much neck and neck. If you go M1, we're on M2. M2 Pro to M2 Max. So if you go ahead and line those up right next to each other, unfortunately, I don't have that system, but it'll give you kind of the ideas on the equivalence of price and where that kind of performance might match up more exactly. But let's go ahead and get into the performance now. First and foremost, taking a look at the simulated benchmarks, you can see that the Galaxy Book Ultra edges out the MacBook Pro on both single core and multi-core in Geekbench. Now, as we move on to Cinebench R23, the single core performance is better on the Ultra. However, when we move into multi-core performance for Cinebench R23, you can see that the MacBook Pro M2 Pro outpaces it by about 1,000 points. Now, going ahead and moving on to the first real-world benchmark, we're looking at Photoshop. And as you can see, inside of Photoshop, we get about a 100-point lead from the Galaxy Book Ultra. Now, this is not a huge lead, and especially that the Apple MacBook Pro M2 Pro is $1999, and the model I'm comparing it with is a whole $1,000 more. So you're getting way more performance, a better bang for buck for performance inside of Photoshop. Now, if you want to do anything, what I would do is I wouldn't upgrade to the M2 Max. I would upgrade to 32 gigs of RAM inside of the M2 Pro, because that's going to give you way more performance potential inside of Photoshop, After Effects, and even video editing. You want to really increase your laptop's multitasking capabilities when it comes to creator workloads, because a lot of times as creators, we have anywhere from 3 to 8 apps open at one time for our workflows. So that would be my recommendation looking at Photoshop. Now, moving on to After Effects, it already destroys the Galaxy Book Ultra by almost 200 points. So imagine if you throw on an extra 16 gigs of RAM when you're purchasing the laptop from Apple or Best Buy or wherever you might purchase it from, you would really be leveling up the performance inside of After Effects. Now moving on to video editing. The playback from the Apple MacBook Pro is slightly better than the Galaxy Book Ultra. And remember, this is the entry-level model. So as you see, we have 85 drop frames for B-RAW out of the Ultra, and we have 9 drop frames out of the MacBook Pro for B-RAW. However, when we move on to red footage, you have 2,800 drop frames compared to the 3,200 out of the MacBook Pro. So kind of tomato, what are you gonna be doing? I really wouldn't recommend either of these computers for like heavy 6K video editing. You wanna get something a little bit more powerful, a little bit more breathing room, something that really allows you to kind of pull the ceiling off of the components. What I find is these laptops tend to throttle quite a bit when doing red footage because it's such a heavy workload. These are thin and light, on-the-go laptops, great for B-RAW, great for 4K, but that 6K red footage is so heavy. Now, moving on to export times. 4K export time out of Premiere Pro, plugged into the charger, 5 minutes and 26 seconds from the Apple MacBook Pro, 2 minutes and 32 seconds from the Samsung Galaxy Book Ultra. But you might ask, Ben, when it comes to the MacBook Pro, you can unplug that little handy dandy charger and get the same performance off the charger. Can the Galaxy Book Ultra do that as well? Actually, in fact, it can. I was honestly shocked to see the performance that kept up while pulling the charger off of the Galaxy Book Ultra, because traditionally Windows laptops lose a lot of performance when you unplug it from the charger. However, we saw a 3 minute and 44 second export time from the Galaxy Book Ultra. So it did lose about a minute on the export time, but it did not get slower than the MacBook Pro. So we see great performance both on and off the charger for the Galaxy Book Ultra, finally meeting Apple with that on-the-go performance capabilities. Now, when it comes to B-RAW, the Apple MacBook Pro really struggled. I saw a wide range of export times. It really threw me off. I ran the test so many different times. Sometimes I saw 58-minute export times. Sometimes I saw like 25 to 27 minutes. So I kind of landed on a median of about 35 minutes to export 6K B-RAW to 6K. Now, the Samsung Galaxy Book Ultra was able to export that 6K to 6K B-RAW footage in 21 minutes and 38 seconds. So overall, if you're going to be video editing inside of Premiere Pro, the Galaxy Book Ultra is the way to go. Now, if you're going to be video editing in DaVinci Resolve, I would lean you towards the Apple MacBook Pro, a 5 minute and 27 second export time compared to a 6 minute and 17 second export time. So you almost get a minute faster by going with the Apple MacBook Pro. Playback is good on both of them, but you're definitely going to save a little bit of time by going with the MacBook Pro. 3D modeling is an area that has not quite made it into the Apple ecosystem. So if you're considering 3D modeling, I would go ahead and check out the Samsung Galaxy Book Ultra. Had good benchmark results, especially for such a thin and light laptop. You can see the results coming up on the screen. Compared to some of the more high performance gaming laptops, it didn't do as well. The main reason being the cooling system. On the thicker gaming laptops, you get a little bit more robust cooling system. Not really better quality or necessarily better technology. There's just more room. They're thicker laptops. It's got more space to cool the laptop. So if you're really getting into 3D modeling, I would not fully recommend the Galaxy Book Ultra, but if you're going to be dabbling, going to school as a student, and it's kind of one of your partial uses, it's not your main use, then it could be a great option for you. The Apple MacBook Pro, just not a lot of native softwares are available for 3D modeling on the MacBook Pro, so it would not be my top choice personally. Punch for punch, which one should you buy? I think if you're looking for raw performance, not too concerned about battery life, and you still want to get really solid thermal temperatures out of the laptop, stays cool and quiet, the Samsung Galaxy Book Ultra is a great pick. However, you're going to be paying quite a high price to get that performance. You're getting the latest RTX 4070 graphics from NVIDIA, you're getting the latest i9 13900H from Intel, all packed into a really nice chassis from Samsung. So there's definitely a price premium on it. Whereas with the Apple MacBook Pro M2, you have an all Apple design and manufacturing, which has allowed them to bring the price down over the years. Still have great performance, have amazing battery life, but one of the things that stands out to me is it is a little bottleneck on some tasks. But however, if you want to bump up the price of the model by increasing your RAM, you could really catch up to some of the areas where the Ultra outpaced the Apple MacBook Pro. Now, if it were me and I was looking for somewhere to put my money, I have an iPhone, so I fit a little bit more into the Apple ecosystem. So it's really hard because I do like the on-the-go performance, I like the build quality, I do like Windows a little bit more because I've just gotten used to it over the years using Windows as my main editing workstation. But I would have to lean towards the Apple MacBook Pro for the ecosystem, for the battery life, for the thin and light on the capabilities, and great performance. But they're both really good. If I was a Samsung user and had a Samsung phone, like something like the Galaxy S23 Ultra here, this would be great. It would be an awesome ecosystem for my devices to work really well together. So maybe I'll get into that one day, and I might be a higher contender for the Ultra. But punch for punch, they're so close as far as their design, build quality, usability, and performance. Let me know. Comment below. I'm super curious. Links in the description if you're ready to make a purchase, and I'll see you here in the next video.